Hi, my name is Corey Langley, and this is college and high school statistics. I wanted to share a little bit today about what your son or daughter will be doing in CHS stats this year, and a little bit about why I think it's important for young adults, everybody, to have a good understanding of statistics. I start with a quote here by H.G. Wells. You can read it there. Statistical thinking will one day be as necessary for efficient citizenship as the ability to read and write. And if you think about this, he said this around the turn of the century. And if you look back historically, um, people say that one of the most important, influential inventions in history has been when Gutenberg invented the printing press. Okay, before that, pretty much only um, the rich, the elite, had the ability to read and write because they're the ones who had access to books. But when the printing press was invented, then that enabled everyone, okay, to eventually access books and therefore become literate. So, what Wells was saying at the time is that being able to understand and process information, data, is essentially going to be as necessary for being a good person, a good citizen, as just literacy itself. And my question is, have we reached that day? I have a couple of things that I usually go over with students. This is what I talk about with my students on the first day of school. Okay? What is statistics? What do they already know about statistics? And why are they taking this class? Okay? They've had some statistical background in their math classes up to this point. They usually talk about mean, median, mode, that sort of thing, average, some basic probability. Okay? But the reason why they're taking this class is that um, statistics is going to be essential, okay, no matter what field of study they plan on pursuing. Okay? Whether it's a math and science field or more of a social science, okay, they're going to have to take a stats class somewhere along the way. And being able to get a head start on that in high school, I think, is really important for them. Malcolm Gladwell, one of my favorite authors, said back in 2009 that if he were breaking into journalism today, he would start by getting a master's degree in statistical reasoning. Steven Pinker, a Harvard psychologist, he was asked, what is the most important scientific concept that lay people fail to understand? Statistical reasoning. A difficulty in grasping probability underlies fallacies from medical quackery and stock market scams to misinterpreting sex differences and the theory of evolution. So, last quote here, this Harvard economics professor said that one thing the modern computer age has given everyone is data, lots and lots of data. There's a large leap, however, between having data and learning from it. Students need to know the potential of a number crunch as well as its limitations. And all college students are well advised to take one or more courses in statistics, at least until high schools update what they teach. And that's what these students are doing. They're taking advantage of, I think, a great opportunity in possibly receiving college credit at the high school level for a very affordable price. They mention in the quote here, we have access to data. Uh, we have just seen this change in the last 25 years. Information is available to us pretty much instantaneously. What statistics does is it allows us to sort through that information and identify what that data is telling us. What is the message? Okay, statistics is a tool for making interpretations and conclusions about data. So, have we reached this day where statistical thinking, statistical reasoning is as necessary for the ability, as necessary as the ability to read and write? I mean, it's probably a biased opinion for me, but I think that that day has arrived. Okay? And sometimes statistics gets a bad reputation because people are misconstruing its use and abusing the power of statistics. Okay? Statistics is nonpartisan. Okay? People try to use it to fortify their own message or their own beliefs and their own opinions. But I want students to be able to analyze things with a statistical mind, think critically about information and data that's presented to them, as well as being able to collect accurate, descriptive data, a model what's truly going on in that population. So on the first day of school, I usually then present this question to the students, and I'm just going to walk through this with you too. What do other drivers do that annoys you? Yeah. And we usually come up with a little bit of a list, but I show them this list that was created by Consumer Reports. And top 10 most annoying things other drivers do. They'll usually mention things about like not using a turn signal, merging, but the number one thing was texting on a cell phone while driving. And sometimes people are guilty of it. Um, they know that they shouldn't be doing it, but they still do it. And as a whole, as a country, we've recognized that this is an issue. Distracted driving is an issue. And just in the last 11 years, we see May of 2010, this map here, the green states represent texting while driving bans or using a handheld device while driving. It was illegal in those green states. The red states, there was no ban whatsoever. And the blue states as a partial ban. That's usually a ban for junior licenses or younger drivers. And you can see over the last decade, there's been a dramatic shift. We only have one state that's holding out with no ban whatsoever, Montana. And Missouri has a partial ban for the younger drivers. We haven't really seen this much of a consensus across our polarized country on anything else, but the recognition of distracted driving, texting while driving, it's pretty much a uniform consensus that it is a big deal. Our former Secretary of Transportation, Ray LaHood, under the Obama administration, said distracted driving is an epidemic on America's roadways. So I have this data set provided with a bar graph. It's the text messages sent, total text messages sent in the United States in billions of dollars, or in billions. And this goes from 2005 all the way up through 2019. And you can see that we have this exponential growth from 2005 going up through 2011. And then it kind of curiously starts to drop off a little bit and then rise a bit. Okay? So we're identifying that distracted driving is an epidemic. Okay? We're thinking that this exponential growth makes sense. More text messages are being sent. But then I compare it with this graph. Same years, 2005 through 2019, and we're comparing it to the motor vehicle deaths in the United States in those same years. And as this exponential growth is occurring, we're actually seeing the motor vehicle deaths decreasing. And then in the early 2010s, it starts to level off a little bit. It rose slightly in 2016, but then it started to come back down more recently. So, what explains this discrepancy? If it's truly an epidemic, like pretty much everybody has recognized, distracted driving is a bad thing, we are sending more and more messages, but the number of motor vehicle deaths are decreasing. And I asked the students, can they explain this discrepancy? Okay. Is there a statistically significant relationship between this? And what comes down to it is that it's not as easy to say that the number of text messages being sent is causing that change in the motor vehicle deaths. These are two variables that we're trying to develop a relationship, and really, it's not the best representation of what's going on. Notice that these are total text messages being sent, not just those sent behind the wheel. So maybe this is not a correct variable that we're using to model this scenario. Is it even possible for us to obtain just the text messages sent while behind the wheel? Okay. Some data that we want to obtain is next to impossible to actually achieve. Additionally, sometimes students will recognize that, well, these are just text messages, and that does not account for all distracted driving behind the wheel. Okay. And right around 2011 here, that's when Apple came out with their like iMessage, that they're not actually text messages. So those aren't being considered in this data set. And that's partially explaining this drop in the number of text messages being sent. Okay. You have other applications that are now being used to send those messages. And also with the motor vehicle deaths, is that the best resulting variable for measuring distracted driving? And we can still have a distracted driving incident without it necessarily resulting in a motor vehicle death. Maybe there's a better way of measuring that response. And also, a lot has changed in the technology of the cars from 2005 through 2019. Cars are safer. What might have been a death back in 2005 might not be a death in 2019. It might not be an accident in 2019, thanks to like automated driving features and automatic braking, things like that. So the time frame can also impact your results and your relationship between this association. So I want the students to start thinking about these things. And coming from a mathematical background of algebra and geometry, you're used to seeing like whatever happens with X, that changes what happens with Y. In statistics, it's not that cut and dry. Okay? What happens with X, it may impact Y, but it might be all these other variables too. Okay? Variable A, variable B, variable C. And only when B and C are present together does it impact Y. Statistics is a real world math. It describes the world around us. And that's why I like it so much, is that we're getting away from these artificial problems like Sally has 4 apples and Timmy has 3 apples. Like every problem that we do this year is essentially a real world problem. Okay? And it describes the world around us. That's why I think it's important for students to have a good understanding in statistics. So at the end of the day, statistics a very valuable tool for us to be able to describe this world. But one last quote here by Henry Clay: "Statistics are no substitute for judgment." Okay? These are facts that we are trying to determine what the message is that we're trying to display, and it helps us formulate our judgment about different things. And it helps us in our academic world, it helps us in our careers, it helps us just to be efficient citizens in the world around us. Thank you for watching this, and I hope to have a great year with your son or daughter. And if you have any questions for me as the year goes on, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you.